Hmm. Okay. Okay. So first, I'm going to go over just like the synopsis of the case.
Yep.
So it says, um, so this case describes the dilemma of a marketing manager, Thomas Green, who, after being rapidly promoted to a new position, is harshly criticized by his boss. Green and his boss disagree on work styles and market projections. Green believes the sales goals set by his boss are based on creative accounting and grossly overstated the current market environment. A mood of silent conflict develops quickly between Green and his boss, and Green is concerned that his boss is building a case to fire him. Green's situation is one in which his failure to adapt his work style and fully understand the demands and boundaries of his new position may lead to his discharge.
Mhm.
Okay, so what do you see as the key issues in this situation?
So the key issue right now is honestly communication. Communication between Thomas and Shannon, between Thomas and Frank. Like, Thomas just doesn't know how to communicate, like, at all.
Yeah, I feel like he hasn't like had much experience like besides doing his own work type of thing, and so he doesn't know how to like be in a management position very well yet.
If I remember,
And
go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
and I think like he's honestly not really even open to it. Like I feel like um he's just like very negative and I don't know, like almost like arrogant, I guess.
Honestly, he is a little bit. If I remember correctly from the case study, it even said that he had never worked in a management position before. Like, this was his first management position,
I
and not developed the skills for it. So,
yeah. Another thing that I think is an issue is like the first impression that he had of Frank because when he was for when Thomas was first told by Shannon that he was going to be working underneath Frank, she
mhm.
told him like so he wanted to hire someone else. Like she kind of made it seem like Frank's not really happy about like him as the new manager underneath him, and I think that that set a precedent, like in a first impression in the beginning, that Thomas, like already probably felt like Frank didn't like him or whatever and had like a guard up. And I think that um, could have also contributed to the situation that they're in now because it's almost like he doesn't really respect him.
No, I agree with that, like, wholeheartedly. Because as we're like watching, he doesn't even like attempt to work with Frank. Like, in Frank's emails,
Mhm.
he's like, "We talked about this, and we like." He said he was going to like let me know about the schedules, let me know about all these. But then when you read back into the case study, it's like he never actually did the things that he promised he would do. So
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think like regardless of the disagreements that Thomas has, like Frank is the boss. And so, I mean, like his sales goals or whatever, like however unrealistic they might seem to Thomas, like he can, I think that he could have approached his disagreements like in a more professional manner. He could have just talked to Frank like privately instead of, calling it out in front of people. But at the same time, like at the end of the day, it's not really his say.
no,
And
yeah,
so,
I'm agreeing. Sorry, go ahead.
okay. So yeah, I just think that it's almost like understanding his role, and understanding that as unrealistic as they are, like if he's the only like he work is if he works his hardest and everyone else works their hardest and they aren't able to meet the goals, then that's not his fault because it's Frank's fault for setting unrealistic expectations. It's not Thomas's fault for like you know what I'm saying, like not
Yeah,
arguing with it or whatever.
yeah.
But
It was honestly really annoying reading because um I just did not agree with what Thomas was doing.
yeah, I think I mean, like I wasn't like a super bugged by him at the beginning, but then at the end when um like how he was responding and stuff, I was just like, seriously? Like I just felt like he's was just being really unprofessional.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on. If you were Shannon McDonald, would you have hired Thomas Green? Why or why not?
I personally wouldn't because he has zero manager like qualifications.
Hmm.
Um, I might have hired him to be like below, like just one step below, so he could like start learning manager positions and like responsibilities and all those things. But because he has zero manager positions and like everyone that is like a manager at that age is like twice his age, it kind of shows that like he's going to need that time to learn those skills.
Hmm.
I mean, there are people that can jump straight into a manager position and excel. Those are far and few between.
Hmm. I agree. I think she was like tempted because of like their how they were both from the same area and everything, and she just like liked him as a person, but
Mm.
I don't think that she did really thought about it like as much as she should have before hiring him. And even then, like I don't know that I necessarily wouldn't have hired him, but I think that she could have been a lot better about like providing the training that he needed before like jumping into the position,
Oh
because
yeah.
yeah, I just think that that wasn't like the best decision. But I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts about that, or should I move
No,
on?
not really. It's just that like I disagreed with like hiring him as a manager like so fast right away because
Hmm.
just just looking at his skills, he wasn't ready for it.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. Um, okay, and so kind of like with what the I don't know if you'd call it like a theory, but the article that we read about like the priorities and
Yeah.
how that can like cause issues. So kind of going with that, because obviously Frank and Thomas are very different. So what does Frank value versus like what Thomas values? What?
Um, I would say that Frank values how to say this. I always hate these questions. He values like what like the company wants. Does that make sense? Like the company has an idea of like we want growth, we want a lot of growth. He values that and he's going for that. That's why his numbers are so big and so much reach for them.
Mm-hmm.
I know the next question is like what is Thomas's values? So can I just like switch to that too as well?
Yeah, yeah,
Thomas's values though are more of like what are my people and I able to accomplish? And as he was like talking to the account executives and like the people below him and like his clients, he was like, we can't accomplish these goals. And so he just like set himself up to fail before he could like necessarily need to.
yeah. I would agree with that. I would agree that he's more like pessimistic, and that would make it even harder to reach the goals that Frank did set. Like, regardless if he could actually meet them or not, I think that it is kind of like setting yourself up for failure when you're negative like that. Another thing too that I noticed, because like I know how you said that Frank values like work and like wanting to accomplish like the company goals and everything. And I think that like I wouldn't say Thomas doesn't come. I mean, I don't think he values that as much as Frank does, but like I it also the case also talked about like how Thomas has like he's trying to buy a house right now, and he has like his girlfriend or fiance and trying to like maintain that relationship. And so I think that like Thomas values other things outside of work, and um it might even be affecting his work, because I know in the case it's talked about how he was supposed to be at this one in this one state for like a certain amount of days, and he decided to leave early like without consulting Frank first. And so I just think like he doesn't value work as much as Frank does.
Yeah. I do agree with that.
Yeah, and I think and that kind of goes with like their end goals as well. Like we answered that how we both. Oh, I'm so sorry about that. 1 second. Okay.
Wow, they're obedient.
Sometimes.
Well, props on this time.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't start again. But anyways, oh my gosh, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, their end goals. So
Yeah.
well, I don't really know actually about like Thomas. I guess Thomas wants to move up in the company, but that might be his goal, but I don't think his values really like reflect that goal. But
Yeah.
Frank, I think his goal is is the same thing as his priorities, how he wants to like make the company be successful, and that's like his main focus and that's his end goal. And with the situation with him and Thomas specifically, I think that honestly, I don't think it's really necessarily about Thomas and like how it wasn't the person that he originally wanted. I think that he just wants someone underneath him that will actually just like trust him and follow him. And so when Thomas isn't doing this, it's not really like helping Frank get his end goal.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I feel that like Thomas's end goal is purely just to make money. There to get a paycheck, make money, that kind of stuff. Whereas Frank, I feel his end goal is to improve the company. So
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Um, okay, so we kind of already talked about this too. How it says who is mostly at fault for the state of the current situation. And I think like we both agree that it's Thomas, which you agree with that?
I feel that like it is mainly Thomas's fault. He's got the highest percentage. I do think that is also Frank's fault. I don't. He's not blameless for me.
Okay.
Because, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say, so what do you think that
Oh,
Frank
okay, yeah.
like?
I think that Frank has been a manager for long enough that he should have developed the skills to try and explain why he's doing the things he's doing to like a problem employee. Because you can be like, hey, Thomas, like, I need these things because this. The way it was presented in the emails, it was more of like, hey, I need you to update your calendar, do it. Instead of like, I need you to update your calendar because I might have like a new client for you to visit in that location that if you move and like you're not updated, I can't get you to them. So
Yeah, and I think that also goes along with kind of what you were saying at the beginning, how like the main issue is the communication.
yeah.
Because yeah, I think that's totally true that Frank isn't really like communicating the best way that he could to Thomas in those type of situations.
Froze.
Hmm?
Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah. Could you hear me when I talked or no?
You froze for like a good 10 seconds.
Okay. I was just saying how if like how back to what you were saying about the communication being like the main issue that um like that is something that Frank could work on is like how he approaches Thomas and how he instructs him to do things. Because I mean, I don't know if that really would make that much of a difference, but I think that Thomas feels like he's just telling him and not really having like a reason or like having evidence or whatever, you want to call it.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you were in Thomas's situation, what actions would you take?
Uh, this is such an interesting question. Is it? I just don't know. If I was Thomas, I'd probably just keep doing what I was doing and eventually get fired. But me being in that position, I would talk to Shannon because I know that like Shannon wants to like talk, and
Mhm.
I would express that I don't feel that Frank is explaining what he wants enough, and like I don't feel that he has enough reasons for everything that he wants me to do, and that if he had the reasons, if he like gave me the reasons, I'd be more than willing to like try and accomplish what he wants.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Um, when going in and talking with Shannon.
Mm-hmm.
I also thought of an idea. I thought that it would maybe be a good idea for him and Frank to actually like spend time together and do something like non-work related because I think that like because I was thinking about the article we read either like last week or 2 weeks ago about building like a good team and how having like personal relationships with your team members like can really help. And so I think that if Thomas and Frank did develop like an actual friendship or like a personal relationship that they would have more respect for each other and like moving forward they would be better about like communication and like knowing what each person like needs or wants.
Mm-hmm. That would be a really good idea.
Okay. Um, so we can talk about this just briefly. Do you have the agenda up by any chance?
The leader agenda.
Yeah, it's fine if you don't.
I just one click and I'm there. So
Okay. Because there's the one question about it says what are each of their conflict styles, and then it has there's like four hints, and it gives kind of like the four different
yeah.
like conflict styles. And so, what do you think? Just looking at those, what do you think like the difference between the conflict styles are between Thomas and Frank?
Um, I definitely think that Thomas's is avoidance, disassociation, ignoring or discounting the conflict. You know, he's basically like, "There's this thing, I'm just going to ignore it."
Hmm.
So, um, I would say that he also has a slight bit of compet com- competition because
Hmm.
he's uncooperative. Like, but I feel that his main conflict style is avoidance. Um, I would say that Frank's is a lot of collaboration. Um, he's trying to work with him. He's invited him in. He's like had meetings with him because you can see those from like the emails to Shannon.
Hmm.
But there's also like the little bit of uncooperative like behavior with him not
Hmm.
like trying to explain himself more than he already has.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can see both of those as well with Frank.
Hmm.
It's like difficult because I mean, like you would think that if someone like used collaboration that they wouldn't have like as many issues with someone else, you know? But I think that because of like his other conflict styles as well, like that can cause issues between them too.
And I also feel that like the competition from Frank is
Hmm.
mainly just because Thomas is avoiding the issue. If Thomas
Yeah,
if Thomas wasn't avoiding the issue, they would collaborate together and things would work out. Like
yeah, I
so.
totally agree. And I think that like these styles weren't in I guess the avoiding kind of is, but like confrontation, which I guess could be kind of like competitiveness, but I think that like Thomas is a lot more passive and like he I mean, he did confront Frank that one time in the meeting, but I think that like maybe one-on-one, like he didn't want to talk to Frank about it personally. He wanted to like call him out in the meeting, probably for like the competitive, nature of it. But I think overall he's like more passive, and I think that Frank is more confrontational, at least in a one-on-one situation.
Oh yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
So, and I think that's always hard when one person's confrontational, one person's passive. It makes it really difficult to work through problems.
That's very true. Yeah.
And then I was just gonna also mention, because I just thought of it when I was reading the conflict styles. Like, I think Shannon, actually, I think she's more of, it sounds like she's more of like a compromising or collaboration, because she's trying to talk to both of them, get both of their sides, and
yeah, I could totally see that. Sides. And at the very beginning, she's like, hey, this is gonna happen, you might have to like change a little bit. She's just like, she was trying to like have them change, like at least Thomas change, so that like it would work out.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I could totally see that. What should he do now?
Yeah, we kind of already talked a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Like ideas of what he could do. Do you have any other ideas of what he could do?
One of my thoughts was that he could actually step down a level. Like, instead of just being completely fired, they could like demote him down a level, like promote somebody, demote him down to that level. So then he could like gain those experiences, because like he seems like a guy that has ambition, and that's always good to have in a manager, is somebody that's like ambitious. But without the right skills, that ambition just like leads to stagnation. Like, so he's so ambitious that he gets over the top of his head and he can't manage anything, and so he stagnates, and then he has to get fired. But by demoting him down, by like basically replacing him with somebody below him, like putting him down into that spot, they can like train him and groom him to be like the manager that he could become.
Yeah, I actually really like that idea. I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, that could work. I actually had a team lead, whatever you want to call it, and then we had a person above him, and that's the guy who like I really report to, I really work under, because the team lead like wasn't really like doing his responsibilities and stuff, and so they actually demoted him. So like he's still on my team, but he just has like different responsibilities. Like he's not like the team lead anymore.
Yeah.
So,
and it's like not as prevalent because people just like don't want to deal with it, and they'll just fire people. But it is a strategy that if you see something in a person that, sorry, something just like popped up in my face.
Oh, that's fine.
So that's why I like stalled. But if you see like potential in a person, then demoting them so they can grow is better than just firing them.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Do you think that there's anything that he can do to repair the relationship with Davis that we haven't already talked about?
I don't think so, because we've already talked about him like talking to Shannon and then talking like one-on-one with Frank in a more active manner, which is like persuasion and personal appeals and all that kind of stuff. But basically what he needs to do right now is to adapt, which we've already talked about. So I don't think there's anything else. Can you?
I personally couldn't think of anything else, but the hint says role playing could be a good way to demonstrate this. So I don't know, like, if that means, like, I mean, when I read that, now I'm thinking they might be talking about like us, but when I read that, I was thinking, like maybe they could do role playing, and like, you know what I'm saying? Like Thomas could be Frank, and Frank could be Thomas, with Shannon there, and just like get a better perspective of like how the other person is seeing things. I don't know.
Yeah, like That is an interesting way of viewing that. I mean, is totally saying for us to role play, but I like how
Well,
you took that hint and like Thomas and Frank could totally do this. That's awesome.
yeah,
Um,
that's so funny.
application.
Okay, what?
Application.
Yeah.
The next spot.
Um, do you know what managing up means?
Um,
Does that mean like managing the person above you?
I don't know. That's a real.
How can managing up be applied at work? I mean, I'm just gonna assume. So my boss now, like we have one-on-ones
Mhm.
like every month or so, and like when we have that, he always asks everyone like what he could do better or like what they're, they like he gives us all a chance to like talk and and so I think that managing up could be helpful in that type of situation because he can give Frank feedback on how like he thinks that he's being as a boss and without, I mean, it's like sometimes it's hard to find the line like between being rude or like coming off like
No, yeah,
in a bad way,
yeah.
but I think there is a way to give like constructive feedback to managers, and so I think that's kind of what it's talking about. But
That was a good guess. Managing up, I looked it up online. I was just like, I have no
okay.
idea. I need to know this. It means being the most effective employee you can be, creating value for your boss and your company. That's why the best path to a healthy relationship begins and ends with doing your job and doing it well. So basically, managing up is just like, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to manage myself to be what this company needs. So
Okay.
instead of like slacking off at work, you're like, okay, I have this free time. What can I be doing to improve my like personal self to be better for the company?
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good because um like the situation where Thomas just chose to like leave the city early or whatever and just not work those
Yeah.
couple days, like he could have um maybe more thought about that and like what he could have done to help the company better.
No, yeah, definitely.
Okay. What are the principles of power within an organizational structure? Mm, I think that means like I don't know. Principles
Um,
of power.
I would say like a principle, like the principles of power within organizational structure. I would say those are like the managers. Um, maybe I don't know. That's weird. Principles of power.
I mean, I don't know if it's just talking about like the different um like how you go up. So like there's like the main employees and then there's Thomas who's over people and then there's his boss who's over other management and then there's Shannon who's just over like all of management. I don't know if that's what it's talking about because principles of power.
I think
Um
maybe it's talking about like being trustworthy, being proactive, stuff like that.
that's a good
Because
guess.
that's like principle. Like a principle would be like being honest is a principle. But of it being of
Yeah.
power within an organization, that would be like what principles are you using to help the organization is how I'm interpreting it right now. So like
Mhm.
leadership skills would be like principles of power, communication skills, stuff like that.
Mhm. Okay, that makes sense. I agree with you. Um, okay, I don't know. Do we ask every single question on here? Do you know, or can we like?
It does. It's not. We don't have to ask every single question. I think it says at the top. Um, So I think it says like here it says like read the document to maximize your group's time and facilitate high quality discussion.
Okay.
So if like we skip a question or two, then like as long
Okay.
as we had high quality like conversation, it should be fine.
Okay. Yeah, because I kind of skipped a couple earlier just because like I was like, we kind of already went over that, but
Oh yeah.
yeah, okay. Um, okay, I'm just gonna go down to the connections part. So what gospel connections are pertinent?
Um, so I would say that like being like honest, which is like a pretty strong like principle in the gospel,
Mhm.
is really pertinent because if Thomas was just being honest with Frank and would and explained himself a little bit more, he's like, well, I don't feel like this is possible. Here's why. I'm being honest. And then Frank was being honest. They would have had like a more candid like discussion and like would have understood each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I also think like maybe like hard work. I
Mm-hmm.
think I mean I don't know that's not necessarily like a gospel principle that it's like, but it is
It's
like
it.
it is in the gospel, like it is the gospel does um what's that word? Like encourage
Mm-hmm.
hard work and dedication and um I mean just being like part of the gospel is a lot of work because you have callings and you have
Oh
the
yeah.
temple and you have church and all this. And so I think that if you're putting the same type of effort into like a job and in your position in a job, that that's when it could be like relative to that.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay, yeah, I was actually going to bring this up. So it says, are there any connections between this case and this week's reading assignment? If so, what are they?
Okay.
And um, did you have something to manage
Off the
that?
top of my head, no.
Okay, so I actually thought when you were saying the managing up
Mm-hmm.
definition about how like he can manage himself and like always be trying to think about like what he can do better for the company when he's on the company's time and stuff like that. And I was thinking that I don't actually remember if this was specifically in this week's reading assignment or not, but it's in the book
Uh-huh.
and about just like being self-aware and like and having like your priorities because the article talks about the priorities. And so I think that I mean, those are two different things, but self-aware I think could help with managing his time at work. And then I think that the priorities part of it, he can prioritize, well, they can prioritize um, things together in a way. So like I think that Frank could um, like as Thomas's boss, he should have certain priorities that come first for Thomas to focus on.
Mm.
And I think that they kind of need to match up their priorities. And I mean, this is just based on work, like just when they're at work, not at
Oh
home or
yeah.
anything, but like at work that they can match up their priorities and Thomas and Frank can like come up with a schedule or whatever together to make it so that like it works a little bit better. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of just like rambled a little bit, but
No, that's good. I mean, like, I totally understood what you were trying to get at.
okay, good.
So I was like looking just a little bit ahead, just like right before you started speaking.
Okay.
Like the rest of the story about Thomas Green, have you read that yet?
Um,
So after McDonald's February 5th email,
mhm.
Green took the offensive against his boss. He crafted a series of memos, emails, reports, and projections that exposed inaccuracies in creative forecasting. So he definitely went to like the competitive
Wow.
um, kind of style. This data enabled Green to build some alliances with other marketing personnel who used the data to ultimately side with him. On April 4th, it was announced that Frank Davis was being moved laterally to an undefined special project. However, Green's tactic was seen as overly brutal by many in the company, and although he won the battle against his boss, his career was irreparably harmed. McDonald distracted herself distanced herself from him. By July of 2008, Green announced he was resigning from his position to pursue full-time studies for an MBA. So basically, he just like grabbed a ton of data and was just like, "Ha, I'm right, you're wrong," and like forced Green to like lose his position by moving to a different one. But then like everyone just hated him.
Yeah.
So
Wow. That's crazy.
that's the wrong thing to have done.
Totally. Totally. I mean, like, even just going and talking to Shannon, like, he could have explained, like, his side. You know, like, he didn't have to do that. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Man, I know. It's like, what's that saying? Like, win the battle or win the war or something like
Oh
that.
yeah.
I don't know.
Definitely won the battle this time, but he
Yeah.
lost the war.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so is there or do you have any other comments that you think are significant that should be talked about?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. I think we had a good conversation though.
Yeah. For two people, that was quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for joining.
Yep.
Hope you have a good night.
So just hit the stop broadcast real quick.
Oh, okay.